Hello, in case you don't know, my name's John Durden, and welcome to tonight's program. I see some very good old friends here and some familiar faces. This event is part of our 50th anniversary of the college celebration, and this is but one of a series of events we'll have throughout the year to mark our half century of service to our students and community. All are planned and coordinated by a 50th anniversary committee composed of faculty and staff. Tonight's program is our Golden Anniversary panel, which will feature memories, anecdotes, and stories from a range of faculty, staff, former students, and community persons who have been associated with the college as it went through its various iterations, from Emmanuel County Junior College to East Georgia College to East Georgia State College. Tonight, we're fortunate to have some of the original faculty, staff, and students with us, and I'm proud to say that I'm one of them. On the stage, we're going to have 8 panelists. We're waiting for one to show up, but there are others seated in the auditorium as well. For those of us who worked at the college, we became part of a family, and tonight's program is the kind of family reunion for us. Dr. Alan Brazier, professor of English, will be our moderator tonight. Dr. Brazier.
Good evening. This is Bob Brown sending congratulations as you celebrate the 50th anniversary of East Georgia State College. I regret that circumstances prevented me from being with you in person and enjoying a reunion with so many colleagues and students I have known at East Georgia over the last 21 years. In 2002, I retired from AT&T Bell Laboratories after working 31 years with engineering groups and managing teams that designed and launched Telstar communication satellites. After my retirement, I was privileged to have an opportunity to join the faculty at East Georgia College, now East Georgia State College, and to later serve as Dean of the School of Math and Science. Words cannot adequately express the joy I experienced over the next 14 years in teaching and working with eager students and a superb faculty and staff as thousands of students were encouraged to reach for the stars and achieve their dreams. As we all work together to help students launch their careers, I experienced just as much excitement as I felt when I launched satellites into space. I am so thankful that through advances in technology, I am able to still be in contact with former students who are now working in near and distant places with an aim to contribute to the advancement of humankind as they enjoy the fruits of their education at EGSC. As East Georgia State College continues its journey through the next 50 years, I wish Dr. Schechter and all who work with him great success as they continue to lead our beloved college to achieve even greater things.
So good evening and welcome to this celebration of East Georgia College's first 50 years. My name's Alan Brazier. I've been here for half that time as an English professor. We have some people up here that have been here most of the time and a few that have been here all of the time. So we're going to begin with the panel. Just ask people to go down the line, introduce themselves, give us some sense of their place at the college. You want to start us, David?
Okay, Mike.
Okay. My name is David Gribben. I came here in 1981, and I came in response to an advertisement for coordinator of the career business program that I found in the Wall Street Journal.
My name is Benny Brinson, and I came here as assistant registrar, assistant director of admissions with Peggy Salmons, and I got to meet all of these other folk.
I'm Robert Cerncy. I came here before this building was here. I came in 1973, and I was the business department, the entire thing. I taught all the classes, and I retired in 2001, I guess, after about 28 years. So all of this is really new to me.
Well, as I said, I introduced myself already. I'm John Durden. I was a history teacher here, and I came in '73. I was coming in to do an interview when Robert Cerncy was coming out of the building, Coleman Hotel, having done his interview.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Darlene Chapman Dickens. I came here before all of y'all did. I'm actually the first applicant to Emmanuel County Junior College, which would have been in the fall of 1972. I was in the first class beginning in the fall of 1973, and as Professor Cerncy said, we were not here. We were at the National Guard Armory. Once I graduated from here in 1975, I returned back home again in 2009 as a part-time professor. Went through the whole realm of that, and I'm now a part-time professor again.
Good evening. My name is Sandra Sharman, and I was hired as the founding director of the East Georgia State College campus in Statesboro 25 years ago, and I'm still around.
Good evening. I'm Desmond Purcell, professor of art here at East Georgia State College. I was hired part-time in 2004, and I come from a long line of Bobcats. My grandfather, Harry Vernon Purcell, studied art with Neil Kalmanson. My father, Vernon Purcell, studied art with Neil Kalmanson, and now I'm here teaching art at East Georgia State College.
Okay, and we've got a few people in the audience who were asked to come, who have connections with the college. And so, is this blasting y'all out? This feels really loud to me. It's okay? All right. All right, so when we first got here in '97, Sandra and I came in the same year. One of the first things we found out is that if you needed to deal with somebody in the business office, or if you needed to deal with somebody in human resources, if you needed to deal with somebody managing the fleet, or if you needed to get something from the bookstore, all roads led to Annette Lewis, who is down here. So when did you actually start here at the college, Annette? 74. She really wore all the hats there for a long time. Jimmy Wedenkamp, what do you have to say for yourself here after all these years still? All right, so you've turned in the years. Dr. Goodman, I think you must have a record for longest standing provost. I know at this college, it must be a good run compared for throughout the whole system.
I think I have the world record for surviving 4 presidents.
Okay, okay. In 2000.
I'm not opposed to any of these people on campus.
How many presidents did you survive, Susan? All but one. I didn't realize that you worked for Dr. Walker. Oh, he's the one you didn't. Okay, okay. So all but Dr. Walker. All right. So when I got this list of names, I knew most everybody, but I didn't know Kendall Gross. I have found out who he is, at least, to see you and recognize you now. What is your connection with this college?
Well, I went to school here in 88 and 89,
Okay. Well, it's good to have you here. And all right, so we have in the audience someone who is among the very earliest hires, and that would be Miss Betty Doyle, who was a librarian here when I got here in '97. Where did you actually get hired in relation to all the founding members of the college? Okay.
And we worked downtown in the old granny building, right there on number 1.
Okay. So before we got to this campus.
Right.
William Donaldson, chemistry professor when I got here, one of the most welcoming voices in 1997. So when did you first arrive?
I taught my first year in fall of 1975. I had taught part-time before that, and but I began under contract in 1975 and taught for 28 years and retired in 2002.
All right.
So, and I've seen many, many, many changes, and during the time that I was here, Marvin Baker and I, in the science department, we've commiserated, and really, I have really enjoyed my contact with the students and watched them develop so that they could, whether they were in pre-med or pre-pharmacy or the agricultural courses, I enjoyed seeing them develop so that they could transfer on and to a senior institution and get into the things that they really love to do.
As I understand it, and I never saw this, you used to wreak havoc in intramurals, faculty versus students.
Oh, really?
That's what someone on the panel has told me more than once.
He was a very good spiker in volleyball. He jammed some students really bad.
Well, I really enjoyed sports. And the students sort of actually were pretty aggressive toward me, so I had to defend myself.
Okay.
Well, y'all need to know this about Mr. Donaldson. I found this out, and I'll never forget it. He told me that he used to bring his dog with him to work every day, and the dog would wait under the truck or in the bed of the truck. And,
Well, it depended on the time of year.
yeah.
In the summertime or spring, he would get under the truck in the cool place and wait there for me. So he was very loyal. Yeah.
By the way, we had a president that used to bring his dog to work too. Foster Watkins.
I did not remember that at all. So when I got here and got hired, I got a job and I came here. My wife and I, we moved in and rented a house from June Williams. And some of you may remember her. She owned several properties, and she was, I think, an intensive care nurse at the hospital for years. And it was really this strange moment when I got here, and I said, I'm going to be working at East Georgia College, because she couldn't call it anything but ECJC, which I'd never heard of before. And Ken Warnick, I was told you might actually remember the days of ECJC.
Egg Jack. Back in the day, not ECJC, but
Okay.
I survived the years with John Durden and Robert Cernsey up there. I got to tell this story about Robert Cernsey. How many in here had an accounting class under Robert Cernsey? Okay, well, Robert was so good, and he taught. I think he was 80 years old when I was here in 1980, but he had taught so much that he actually had the slides somewhat memorized. We used to use the old overhead slides. And we would love to see him in class with the slide upside down and backwards, and he was pointing out where he thought things were, which is not where they were. And he'd go through a whole class, and we wouldn't say anything, and Robert would just cruise right along. But knew his content. I don't know how much we learned, but he taught a lot. But I was here from 1980 to 1982, and then went on to the University of Georgia and have a lot of fond memories of the school. And then when I came back to Swainsboro, went to work with Buckley and Associates in '97, and actually had the opportunity to be on the design team of this building and the gymnasium down there. So it's just kind of continued through the years.
Yeah.
These people were really a joy to work with. And he was talking about the accounting classes here. I was always came into class, and they had this big screen that I had to pull down like so. One time I came in, and I just, without looking, I just pulled the screen down, and everybody was going like, oh, Lord. And what they had done, they had taken the centerfold out of a Playboy and taped it to the screen, and I had no idea that was going to be there. And it was just, when I turned around and looked, this lady was looking at me, and I was looking at her, but this is the kind of relationship we had with the students. There were always some practical jokers around, always playing little games with you and so forth. But being with the students was, someone asked me when I retired, what was I going to miss? And the one thing I said, I'm going to miss the students. When you spend your entire life working with 18, 19, 20-year-old people, they always keep you alert, and you have to be really on your cues because they're going to come after you a little bit. But being with those people for 40 years, I taught about 10, 12 years in high school, and then I came here. So I spent 40 years in the classroom, and I have some stories that you just would not believe, some of the things that's happened to me. But that was an example of the kind of thing the students were always doing to me. And they knew that I wouldn't get angry with them. They were just having fun.
And Jerry and Paula Cadle, I believe, not only have you been supporters of the school, I believe you sent 3 kids through here.
All three of our children attended East Georgia, and I was chairman of the foundation for 10 years, so we got a lot of connections with the school. Yeah. It's been a real asset to the community.
And I've taken a few classes out here that I really enjoyed from Neil Kalmanson, and I really enjoyed the pottery lab they used to have. Yeah. And I think the bakers were very instrumental in that too. And that was a sort of a really close friendship for lots of years. Yeah. That we're very thankful for the friendships and the diverse backgrounds of the people who have come into this community. It's been wonderful. Mm-hmm. And continues to be.
Yeah. And I'll tell a quick story. Our oldest son, Ivy, attributes his leadership skills to the 2 years he spent at East Georgia. He was active in the Earth Club and president of the student government. He'll be president of the Georgia Bar Association next year, and he attributes those leadership skills to his 2 years at East Georgia.
So Wilder, you don't sneak out of this. You're the person who's here because of the USG's inability to hire you away back in the years when I first got here and Banner was coming online. And you also play a part sort of in the boomerang lore of the college, which is substantial.
Right. I started as a student here in '86 through '88, and I took Neil's 3D art class, and we made boomerangs, and they had those national boomerang tournaments here, and that was fun to participate in. And I remember Dr. Durden was doing an MTA event and his boomerang went so high and was going across Lake Luck that I got him on a motorcycle, and we were riding around trying to spot it for him. And he was running all over the neighborhood trying to catch it.
Let me explain. MTA is maximum time aloft. It's a special boomerang, and the idea is you throw it, and the winner of the event is the person whose boomerang stays aloft the most time and yet lands within a 100-meter circle. Mine went way beyond 100 meters. I will brag myself a little bit. I did go to a national tournament in Pennsylvania one time and set a world record in MTA. That's my 5 minutes of fame.
Mr. Brinson, I hear this story occasionally. It turns up still. That you actually own a pair of Mick Jagger's pants?
Talking to you, Benny. Tell us the story. Go, speak into it.
I spent some time I grew up here in Emmanuel County in a little town called Summit, Graymont. And when we finished high school, I went to New York, and I acquired a position as desk clerk at the City Squire Motor Lodge in New York City. And a lot of the entertainers would come in there and stay for a while. And so Mick Jagger came in with his band, and I was to take him in. And I said to him, I said, those some nice pants you're wearing there. He said, you like these? I said, yes, I do. And so he goes upstairs and he get all settled in, and he comes down a little while later, and he had 2 pair of pants, the Hip Huggers. I said that name and nobody can relate to Hip Huggers. So there was a white pair and a multicolored pair. He gave me both those pants. And I still have a pair, the multicolored pair today. John tried to get me to put them on. I said, I can't get in them, you know. And bring them to let you see that. That was one story with respect to those pants. I still have them. I wished I had thought and brought them around so you could have seen them. Hip huggers. They would hug your hips.
Okay. When you started here, we came the same year, Sandra, but you came here before me because that summer, I think, because you were starting with this. And as the Statesboro Center started, I don't know if people appreciate exactly what it was to have the entire operation run out of the Harvey House. How would you describe that to people?
Okay, so when East Georgia Statesboro was opened right next to the Georgia Southern campus, our offices and faculty offices and administrative offices were put in this split-level home right in the middle of campus courtyard apartments. And all we had to do was walk across Chandler Road into the continuing ed building and teach our classes. At that time, all of our classes met in that building. But there were 2 or 3 of us per bedroom assigned there with offices. We managed to run financial aid. Financial aid got its own bedroom. We were just up under each other. And the thing was, we were growing so rapidly that we had to bring more faculty in. I remember the first year, I think you would drive over, and the math teacher, John Blackburn would drive over.
Greg Kelly was teaching over there that
Greg
first year.
Kelly, and so we borrowed from this campus, and they would drive to Statesboro and teach. But in the meantime, Georgia Southern sort of got rid of their learning support program. So all of a sudden, we're growing exponentially, and we need new professors. And so we recruited a lot of Georgia Southern faculty to come and work for us. But, and speaking of Campus Courtyard, Dr. Durden, I'm gonna tell on you.
Okay.
He may deny this, but I believe it was, we were on the quarter system, so classes didn't start until later at that first year. And so anyway, it must have been the summer following, because I remember that Campus Courtyard Apartments used to use the Harvey House as their leasing office, but then they built a pool with a really nice, beautiful leasing office just behind the Harvey House. And during the summer, the weirdest thing would happen. All of these utility trucks from the city would pull into Campus Courtyard and pull through and stop behind the Harvey House, and we thought, well, are they getting a nap? What's going on? And then Dr. Durden and some others spent some time in that back kitchen window too, I have to say. But it turns out that some of the international students were from Brazil. And they spent some time at
Hip
the pool.
huggers.
And it attracted quite a bit of attention. It was hilarious for us. But yeah, so the house is gone now. In fact, if you haven't been to Statesboro recently, they've leveled Campus Courtyard. They're putting a parking lot there. So it's gone.
I won't deny the accusation. I was going to tell the story too. I was going to say some of the male faculty members spent a lot of time at the window looking at that. Yeah. Okay.
I guess the only two original faculty members is John and myself that are here. I think William and Benny came a couple of years later. They didn't have the benefit of that first year when we taught classes out at the Armory. And we had our faculty offices were over the Davis Drug Store downtown. And they had gone to a lot of trouble getting equipment. And if it hadn't have been for government surplus, we wouldn't have had anything. We had a government surplus desk, and we didn't have anything new. And when we came, they gave us a cardboard box that had in it a stapler, it had some staples in it, I think it had a ruler in it, you had some legal form in it, and it had a box of rubber bands, and it looked like you were in first grade. And when I retired, I gave it all back to them. I was trying to help their budget just a little bit. But teaching classes out at the Armory was a real, I guess it was a real hoot. If you've ever been to the Armory, down each side is rooms, and in the middle is just a big basketball court. And between classes, we would have basketball games. The faculty would play the students for about 10 or 15 minutes, and then everybody would go to class, and then we'd stay for an hour, and then we'd come back and pick up our game right then and what have you. It was really amazing how the faculty and the students got along so well. But those Armory years were really something else. I taught a class that the National Guard had their equipment in. The classroom I was in had a cyclone fence, divided it, and behind that cyclone fence was all their equipment, their weapons and all that kind of stuff. And on one side there was a big piece of plywood that they had put up there, and in that piece of plywood there was a hole blown out of it about that big. So teaching classes in a room filled up with old Army equipment and holes in the wall, those kinds of situations, and hot. God almighty, it was hot in those places. There was no fans, no air conditioning, no nothing. Everyone just glistened when you came out of those classrooms. But teaching in the Armory here was a real experience, and I'm sure John has some experiences there that first year.
Yeah, the campus was not completed, and the college, let's see this. So the classes were at the National Guard Armory out on Highway 57, and the college's administrative offices were in the Coleman Hotel, where the county commissioner offices are now. And the library and biology lab was over in the old Durden Hotel, which disappeared in a fire several years ago. And Marvin Baker, who taught biology, used to talk about teaching in that storefront, and when the 18-wheelers came through, this is before bypass days, the windows rattled, you know. And the faculty officers, you're right, they were over Davis Drugs. I went up there, by the way, recently and reacquainted myself with that area. The new owner was showing me the building. But, you know, I do think, and I think in retrospect, that fostered, like as you said, a close relationship between the faculty and the students. And, you know, all of us in that original faculty, and you saw some pictures of them on the PowerPoint, we all kind of bonded because we were all from somewhere else. And, you know, we were in a new enterprise. And I must say, from my point of view, to be at the ground floor of a college being built was really a learning experience for me and very valuable as time went on. Rarely do you get to be in the ground floor of something like that, and I did. Usually you come into something where everything's already established and so forth and so on. One other thing I'll say, I don't want to hog all the time, one other thing I will say is the administrators, Dr. Walker, the first president, and who was there for the first 3 years, and Dr. Gunn, who's going to succeed him and be president, I guess he's had the longest tenure of any president we've had, they both really tried to inculcate the idea of faculty trying to reach out and engage with the community. And so we used to have something called continuing education. And we'd go out and we'd do talks and keep records of it and so forth. And we had a faculty member named H. Leon Abrams. Notice everybody laughs when I mention that. God rest his soul. But he was the first director of continuing ed, and I think he was really kind of job scared. He wanted to keep his job and do a real good job. Anyway, he was from Georgia, but he taught in New Jersey for years. We had such a continuing education program going down here that we outpointed Georgia Tech. You know, when they did the statistics, we were doing more continuing ed than they were doing. You know, it was amazing. But it did help us, I think, you know, become part of the community. People got to know who we were. We weren't some kind of bunch of weirdos from, you know, somewhere else. And I think that was something that kind of cemented our relationship, you know, with the community.
Yeah, I never knew Leon Abrams, but I know the laughter that comes with his name. And I just want to say,
you've really missed something.
When I got here, I had the chance to teach with 5 of the founding faculty members, and I remember saying to Jackie, my wife, you know, this seems a good place to be. When I came to interview and I stood on the quad, that was back when we had 3 grounds people. 3 ran the whole thing. And I remember thinking then, this is the place. But I remember saying to her, I can stay here for at least 5 years. And it didn't take many years working with the 5 that were still here and the long-timers that I think cemented the idea in me that this was the place to retire from. So you remember the Armory in a different way, Darlene. How were the Armory years for you?
From a student's point of view, I don't remember the basketball games. I do not remember that.
I know we had badminton.
I wasn't, not really.
Okay.
No, my recollection is I remember very well the rooms, the classrooms, and I remember it was hot. I do remember that. I also remember my memories of in between classes was going out into the middle area and if we wanted to study, which didn't happen a lot, but you were there with your friends, your classmates, and you got to know everybody. I was telling my students today, of which thank y'all for coming, some of my students from this semester, that was some of the best times, was getting to know. And we had okay, quote me, Dr. Durden, 100 and how many our first semester?
It was less than 200. I can't remember the number. Dr. Schechter, you had that quiz you were doing. What was the number? 167.
And that was the proudest we have been, because I worked with Miss Peggy Salmons, and a few years later with Reverend Brinson. Some of the best times. I was a student worker, but my fondest memories are going back and forth, because I was a biology major. So therefore, I had a class at the Armory, sit out in the middle, associate, then leave and come to town and have biology with Professor Baker, and then go over to the Coleman Hotel, and I worked down in the basement, dampest place you have ever seen in your life. But that was the registrar, and I want to think financial aid was down there as well. But it was a great time, and I've got a picture of our first class standing on the front of the Armory, and I wouldn't take anything from my experiences, here as a student. I feel like that, that it molded me, into who I am today, and, allowed me to return, and do, what I really love.
You left one big thing out. Did you see the streaker?
No.
Okay.
I did not.
We had a streaker that came through the Armory.
At the Armory. Must have missed that, or either I turned my head.
Just out of curiosity, was Hawk a first-year student?
I think, yeah.
Okay.
I think so.
All right. His first name was
I
on the
came
way.
in '74, the summer of '74, and that was the last summer at the Armory. So I spent one quarter, and they had me teaching Introduction to Political Science. It was an American government class, and I enjoyed the interaction, and I got to know the students and that kind of thing. It was a place of higher learning. You're talking about the faculty and the staff, but you had to watch yourself because these guys are practical jokers. And I had to learn and learn quickly. We had a fellow who was director of student services named Don Wilson. And somehow the other fellow named Jerry Hooks and I got together, and we had some more students, and they were very active in student affairs. And Jerry and I decided that we were going to roll Don's car. And we did. And he was in the building, and he walked out to see it. He didn't see the culprits. And so he blamed a student for rolling his car. And she left here with that impression that Don thought that she did it. Another occasion, you really, this guy here, we call him the Godfather, So on another occasion, we had some kind of activity going on. We had a great big bunch of balloons, and we had gone over into the new building and the registrar's office and business office and president's office and all in one building. But Don had become a registrar then at that time. And Jerry and I got together. They had a bunch of balloons, and I think there was some helium in them, those balloons, and we filled Don's office up with those balloons. He came walking in to that office, and he opened that door, and he had all those balloons. He had to kick himself in there. He blamed the student for doing that. Jerry and I got away clean. So it was an atmosphere it was an atmosphere of camaraderie with the students and the faculty. It even went so far, and I'm talking about student activities, because I was heavily involved in that. And John mentioned that the faculty participated in these. So they had a tricycle race. Bob Cernsey, I can see him now on that little tricycle. Maybe about 4 or 5 others, I don't know how many.
Bob Simpson was one.
Bob Simpson, that's who, yeah. He was on that tricycle, and it appeared to pull whatever it is together so that we could have that oneness. And so this place, to me, it became a kind of family, became a kind of family. And it would be nothing to get a meal going on. All you have to do is just mention the word and the grease would come out and here we go, the family. So I spent 28 years here, and the people that I associated with became a part of me. And I think that I became a part of them because I told this one, when he called me to ask me to come, I told this, I don't want to say anything, I just want to be part of the crowd. Oh, you won't have to say anything. Last night, this one called me. You have to be careful, and it still carries on. This one calls me, said, Benny, we having this, and said, will you come? I said, well, yeah. Didn't say anything about a panel. I said, well, you don't have to say anything. You just can be in the crowd. So I walk in the door here in this place, and he said, Benny, go up there because we're going to be on the panel. And it carries on. So that was the connection. And I wouldn't take anything from my experience here. Miss Betty Doyle, we came the same time. A fellow named James Dorsey was librarian. We came here at the same time. She was not, John said that he had talked with her, Carolyn had talked with her with respect to it. You have to sort of like pull us along, pull us along. And you have to start way ahead of time in order to get it done. So he told me, he said that Carolyn had talked with my friend Betty, and I thought, well, Betty need to be there. And so, and if I had known about this panel, I probably would have been with Betty. But I called Betty, and I told Betty that I was coming, and I wanted to come. I don't do driving at night because I'm not as fast as I used to be. So I told Betty that I was coming. Betty said, well, I'll drive. I said, okay, I'll go. That solved John's problem because he wanted Betty here. Yeah.
Yeah, I talked to Benny last night, and I was just trying to make sure he was coming because I knew that David had talked to him. And yeah, I told him the story about I hadn't been able to get really talk with Betty. And the reason Betty was important, it is important, she was the last, what I kind of consider, she came that first year, but it was in the spring, 74. She was the last, what I consider the last original hire to retire. I was the last faculty person, but she was actually the last person to retire from the college. And so we got through our conversation. I'd mentioned Betty or whatever. And about 5 minutes later, I get a call from Benny. Betty's going to drive me over there tomorrow night. So that took care of it. And there's another thing, Benny. We always knew when it was Friday, didn't we?
Yeah. There were some unofficial committees on campus here. there was one committee, it was called Committee of 11, but it only had 2 members, me and John. And we were in charge of making sure that these people stayed on their P's and Q's. And some of the activities that we organized, these people were unaware that they were going to receive an award, and we made it look like it was really official, that everybody had signed off on this event. But these people were sometimes receiving awards that they didn't even realize they were going to get. And John and I were on this committee of 11, which was just 2 of us. So you get the idea there that no one else was involved with it, but just John and I. And some of the things that we organized, if it be known, you would get the impression that John and I were not very professional. But
and they were not. I still have my award.
But John, you kind of get the impression that that we weren't doing our job, but that was far from it. Teaching here at this college here, since there was so few faculty people at the beginning, that we got to know all the students, because every student had to take at least one of your classes. And so if you weren't doing very well in John's class, you probably weren't doing very well in my class. But John and I would get together and discuss these students and what we could do to motivate them and those kinds of situations. So there was a lot of counseling and teaching going on that normally you wouldn't find at a larger institution. You could talk to students most any time after class, and if you told a student, "Can I see you after class?" there was no fear involved in that, because normally when I was in college and someone said, "I need to see you after class," I said, "Oh God, something's wrong here." But these students knew that we weren't out to get them or anything like that. So if a student was having a problem in my class and he was taking one of John's class, we could get together and kind of work something out for him to help him out, to get him on the right track and so forth. Because unfortunately, a lot of the students that came to Emmanuel County Junior College to begin with were probably not, and I'm not referring, they were not exactly good students. But most of the people who were good students went on to Georgia Southern or someplace like that. They didn't come here. So the student quality was kind of okay, but you had to work with these people. You really did. You couldn't just assign something and these people would know what to do. Am I right, John?
Yeah, I think, we were a new institution in the community, and a lot of our students were, parents had never been to college. Right. College was not something they understood at all. Now, we still have that issue going on as well. But I think that a lot of the students had the innate ability, as they do now, But I'm so proud, too, of, people like Kendall Gross. And I can name a whole bunch of folks, people who came through and have become medical doctors, lawyers, pharmacists, bankers, and so forth. And I've said this several times to groups, but when I was still working and traveling around and visiting schools, I could not walk into a primary, elementary, middle, or high school in this area that some former student didn't come up and say, "Hey, Dr. Durden, what's going on?" And we filled schools in this area with teachers. We really did. And again, Ken Warnick it was an example. You know, he's CEO of the Emmanuel County Swainsboro Development Authority. And Richard McNeely, who couldn't come tonight, who's chair of the foundation, local attorney, he was a former student. So you know, we really, I think, opened a pathway. Years ago, when the Fulford Center was built, we had a ceremony opening that road, you know, for the new entrance.
Madison-Dixon.
And it's called Madison-Dixon Drive, right. Madison-Dixon had a lot to do with the college being here, actually. He was a local optometrist. And I was asked to say something, and I said, you know, this is not just a road through the woods. This is a pathway of opportunity. People coming on the campus, and I think that was very important. I think it's true. I think it's very important to understand that the role that this college has played over the years, not just educationally, economically, in terms of economic impact in the community, culturally, we had the Vision Series, brought many, many programs here, and will in the future, tremendous impact on the community long term.
So, to David, how early in the development of the college was your, was it like a gator hunting expedition with the students?
I was one of the people who succeeded Leon Abrams as continuing education director, and I was continuing education director in the early mid-90s. And we had a summer camp for kids, and every summer we would take them on a field trip somewhere. And one year we took them to Okefenokee State Park, and it's a swamp, and we were leading the kids in single file on the wooden sidewalk, and over on the side was this huge replica of an alligator. And so one of the kids decided to test that. So he took this big stick and went bam, and the thing moved. And then I saw the kids were engaged with the same alligator about an hour later, but on one side of a large pond, the alligator had beached himself, and the kids were on the other side of the pond. He was trying to get as far away from those kids as he possibly could.
So when I got here, I said there were 5 founding faculty members when I started. Marvin Baker passed away a good while back. He's been mentioned tonight. We haven't mentioned Dr. Jean Bridges, who was the humanities chair from the founding of the college until she left 2002, 2003, something like that. Maybe 2001 even. She recently passed away. The other is not here, Neil Kalmanson. And it's really a shame that he's not here. And Mr. Purcell is here to give him a presence on this panel.
Yeah, it's great to be here for Neil Kalmanson, who couldn't be here with us this evening. He's now in Denton, Texas, for those of you that didn't know. I've got a lot of Neil stories. I think most of them are true. I'll start with his hire. Was anyone here on Neil's hiring committee? Just want to know how much I can exaggerate without being called out on it. So Neil was finishing up his degree in Florida and heading back to New York, and stopped through here, Swainsboro, Georgia, Emmanuel County, to apply for a job as the art teacher at this new institution. And Neil came up in his yellow Chevy van with his wife, Mary, and pulled up at the gas station and got a sense of community here and came in for an interview. And if you don't know Neil, I think most of you did at some point, this was early 70s, and Neil has always been a really hip guy. And at this time, Neil had a lot of hair, a lot. He had a big beard, and he wore sandals and jeans, I would imagine, at this event, sandals and blue jeans. And Neil rolled in to apply for this job with Dr. Watkins, if I'm not mistaken. And they asked him if he had a portfolio to show them. And the story, as I know it, is Neil walked out to his van and started pulling work out and pulling more work out and pulling more work out, and pretty much filled the space with examples of his art. And the committee was incredibly impressed with Neil's artistic talent. But they weren't sure about Neil. They just didn't know if Neil Kalmanson was going to work here in Emmanuel County. And so they thanked him for coming, and Neil and Mary were put up at the TikTok Motel, which was downtown, and they drove the van back to the TikTok, and Mary said, Neil, she said, if you want this job, you're going to have to change. And Neil got a haircut. I mean, Neil got the haircut of haircuts, as I understand it. And Neil got the beard trimmed, if not gone. And I may be stepping into myth, it may be legend at this point, but I believe it was Dr. Watkins who showed up at the TikTok. Dr. Walker, who showed up at the TikTok to thank Neil for coming out for the interview and sort of make the final decision. And Neil answered the door. And he didn't know him. That's right. That's right. And it turns out, thankfully, Neil got the job here at Emmanuel County Junior College and became a cornerstone of the arts here in this community. You cannot throw a stick or a boomerang without hitting something that Neil Kalmanson has had his hands on here in the community. He's done more for this community than I could tell you about here on stage. Neil, in '86, John, I believe, had an assignment in his three-dimensional design class, and the students had to build something that dealt with form and function. And a student brought in a Popular Mechanics magazine. These were great magazines back in the day.
His name is Tim Moore.
Tim Moore. And he said, Mr. Kalmanson, I'd like to build a boomerang. And Neil said, well, yeah, sounds great. As I understand it, that boomerang did not materialize, but the magazine got left in the classroom. Again, some of this is truth, some of this is fact, some of this is legend. There's maybe a little bit of mythology in there too. And Neil picked up the magazine and said, well, I think I could do this, right? So if you don't know Neil, when he gets into something, Neil really gets into something, really gets into it. And so Neil manufactured, I believe he's responsible for the first one. Isn't that right, John?
He was, absolutely.
And it wasn't long before Dr. Durden and Dan Jones were also on board. And if you didn't know it, these three, all three of you were involved in a company known as Rangrights, and they were manufacturing and selling boomerangs right here in Emmanuel County. And for 10 years, we hosted the national.
Yeah, we had, there are a number of boomerang tournaments around the country, around the world now, but around the country, and there is a national tournament kind of into the summer. But we were a recognized United States Boomerang Association tournament. We had national champions come to Swainsboro to throw in our tournament, and then we would go. I've thrown in 3, I guess, and that was just I just fell in love with it. To take a stick and shape it and throw it and it comes back to you. I'm still amazed at that, so I still make them.
Now, since '86, we have made boomerangs in the 3D design class. So we have kept that alive. And Neil and John used to come to every semester I taught the course, they'd come in and do I'd call it a show more than a demonstration on the art and craft of boomerangs. Right. I mentioned my grandfather took a class with Neil, and my grandfather was a realist in the truest sense, and Neil is abstract in the most abstract sense. And they argued. I can remember as a kid, they argued about painting, about what was art, about what wasn't art. And my grandfather's son took courses from Neil, and he was an abstract kind of guy. So he became one of Neil's proteges, and they maintained connections, still to present day. And then I kind of fell into the fold as well. What a guy. How many of you took a class with Neil Kalmanson out there? That's awesome. That is awesome.
There was sort of a story that before the building was here and Neil was trying to have drawing classes in town on the top of, was it the top floor of the Coleman Hotel, or was it the building where Leanna's is now?
It's the building where Leanna's was.
Yeah.
There was access to the roof.
Okay.
And they had some classes up there, I think. Had some.
Figure drawing.
I'm not going to say anything more about that.
Yeah. But some people would. People would slow down walking down the street sometimes, apparently. I'm going to throw in here just for a second something that not everybody was involved in, but that we did boomerangs for a long time. We actually owned this campus, and back when our disc golf course was on the main campus, it worked around where the dorm is now and down to the pond. East Georgia College actually hosted the first sanctioned state college disc golf championship in the nation. It was sanctioned by the NCDGU when disc golf first became a collegiate sport. And the first year we held it, we were the first because Alabama was scheduled to have the first one. At Tuscaloosa, they'd been into disc golf for a while. But weather, I think it was a late freeze maybe, and they were canceled. And Pete May, who was one of the big players in Augusta where they built the U.S. Disc Golf Center, I remember we were talking, and I said, well, Pete, we're scheduled here. And he said, you're going to be first. And one of our students, a guy named Ryan McDonald, I haven't seen him in years. I just got back in touch with him to invite him to a 50th anniversary disc golf tournament we're going to do. He actually won the singles that year. So actually an East Georgia State College student, Ryan McDonald, was the first sanctioned state collegiate disc golf champion in the nation. I can't remember what year it was. I've got to go back and look this up. And Bob, because Neil's here, some people just have a hard time passing when they're driving a car. Do you know what I'm talking about? We talked about this.
Joe Seward. Remember you guys trying to show him how to pass a car? He never passed a car. Oh, remember that? Yeah. There you go. Tell him that.
We were teaching classes over in Dublin, I think, and Joe Seward, is that?
Yeah,
the
Joe
guy?
Seward.
Okay, and it was Joe Seward's time to drive. And we didn't know that Joe had limited experience with driving, and he wouldn't pass a car. And so we were trying to teach him how to pass the car, tell him when to go and when not to go, and that kind of. There was a real trip over to Dublin. It was something else, and we got what the problem was. We got behind this chicken truck, and there were just feathers going everywhere, and we were trying to get Joe to pass the chicken truck. He wouldn't do it. Oh man, I'll tell you, some of the experiences that you had, and some of the college things that we had to do. We had to teach off campus, and a lot of times you were in awful kinds of situations here. John won't admit this, but John was driving the school's van over to Millen, I believe, to teach a class. On the way back, some farmer's pigs got out. And I don't know, how many did you kill, John? Three.
Three, and I thought, we had a Piggly Wiggly in town then, and they had these little Piggly Wiggly stickers, so I thought I'd put them on the side, 3 kills,
Right.
on the side of the door. But they were piglets. I could not. It was either them or me in the ditch, and I just ran right through them. Let me finish that story on Joe Seward. They did make him pass, and so he came back that day, came up to me and said, "John, I passed." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "I passed a car." I said, "Well, okay, I didn't know. I didn't know his property." So, and he was the kind of guy too. He had one way of going home and one way of coming to the school. He would not deviate. It was, he was just, that's the way he was. He was a great guy, but like all of us, he had his peccadillos.
So, one thing I might ask about, William, I have heard that you have some relation to the first energy crisis and the city electric car?
One of their first prototype electric cars to campus to let us try out. And that was quite an experience. So, but we had some courses around the campus that we drove the car, and we supervised the students in their first experience in driving electric cars. So, but that was a very neat experience. So.
Yeah. And Jim, I don't know if anybody mentioned this before, but I associate you with Marvin Baker more than anybody. And I know he was very close to Ivy, the Cato's oldest son. What was it like to first to be his student, then I remember when you were working part-time for him and came on full-time. I had just gotten here. What was it to work as a student and then with him as your professor and then with him as your professional mentor?
Yep. Marvin was unlike anyone that I had ever met in my entire life as a student. I was just enamored with him. He was the smartest guy I'd ever met. At least I thought he was. Mm-hmm. And he was a Renaissance man. He was a writer, an artist, a biologist. He could do just about anything that he set his mind to. And I guess Marvin, above any other of my professors and teachers that I've had throughout my entire life, he influenced me the most. I really enjoyed spending time with him. And so I was a student from 85 to 87, and then I was about to graduate with my PhD at LSU, and I received a letter. We don't often get handwritten letters anymore, but I got a handwritten letter from Marvin Baker, and he said that he was contemplating retirement and wanted to know what my plans were, and so we started talking. And one thing led to another, and I wound up, I was working as a high school teacher at ECI when I graduated, and I was teaching here part-time at night, and at that time, Marvin wanted to teach another year, and he was the same old Marvin. He taught with that Socratic method. He would sit in the front of the classroom with his legs crossed and just talk and ask questions. And I guess for some people that may not be the best method for learning, but I thought it was incredible. It really stimulated my thoughts, and it was just an incredible experience. I think he was one of the best teachers that I've ever experienced, and a great human being. He was so nice. He was a super nice person.
I only knew him for 2 years here, but
Yeah.
Everything you say jives completely with what I know of Marvin.
He was really special. The first year I started at East Georgia, I was a night student, and I was a first-generation student, but I was working at Automatic Sprinkler during the day assembling water valves, these big 500-pound water main valves. Mm-hmm. And I would come to class covered in grease and still have my work clothes on. And he actually wrote a letter to my mother and father and told them that my time would be better spent going to school than working assembling water valves. And he did that. And it was really special.
Yeah, Jimmy, I've told you this before, but Marvin told me one time, he said, Jimmy Wedenkamp is my finest creation.
Well,
Yeah,
really,
he actually said that, yeah.
I really enjoyed
Yeah.
Marvin.
And this is many students were like Jimmy, who really didn't have the ambition to become what you've become. I remember one of our students, probably should have invited him to come tonight, but he's pretty shy, but he was working at Dairy Queen. And Don Wilson talked to him one time. He ever thought about coming to college? Anyway, he came to college. He finished with us. He was a history major. I know, because that's why I know him so well. He was a history major. Went to Georgia Southern, got his teaching certificate, taught at ECI for years. He's retired now. He must have won Star Student at ECI 8 or 9 times. His horizon was Dairy Queen when he started. And that's what I mean by opportunity and opening doors for people that this college has allowed.
Does anybody have any questions or comments that you want to offer from the audience? Seems, since I've talked to half the people out there, it seems odd to call you audience. But
I would like to ask Wilder Coleman a question. Is it true you hate computers?
No, I mean, that's the only thing I've really ever wanted to do professionally. I mean, my dad did it, and then I grew up learning it when it was new technology for everybody. And my earliest memory is my dad worked for Honeywell in Dallas, Texas, and he would carry me to work with him on a Saturday and hand me a stack of 1,000 punch cards, and I would feed them in the machine and watch them bust up against the wall.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for coming tonight. It's been great to have a conversation with each other and to listen to some folks who've really been here from the beginning. And, I hope this is just the beginning. I hope that 50 more years are definitely on the way. Thanks for being here, and thank you all. Dr. Schechter is going to come up here. Sorry, I forgot that. Dr. Schechter is going to come up here and say a few words.
How about another round of applause for Dr. Brazier and the panel? That was really terrific. Let me make sure I've got these details right. We've led children into a swamp. Playboy centerfolds were allowed in class. Streakers were also something that was a big part of the history, and some figure drawings, although I'll have to ask Desmond what those meant later. Brazil played a role in what was going on here, some Brazilian history, and hip huggers. So do I have the first 50 years down pat pretty well? Okay, I want to make sure. This was so much fun, and my thanks to all of these panel members. And if folks didn't see when you came in, it was on right by the table. But do check out a program, because the original pictures for all these folks is in tonight's program, and it's hilarious. So, that's something really, really fun to think through. And I just want to say a couple of things, and first of all was really the thank you to this group for sharing their time, and for those in the audience, thank you for participating as well. Because tonight was just about focusing on faculty and staff and letting the community know how thankful I am, how thankful all of us are for those who have come before us and really help make the college what it is today. And as you see from the experiences of these fine, faculty and staff, I mean, this has been a tremendous place to work. I'm standing on all y'all's shoulders and everybody else's as we think about the future. And all I'm hoping is that 50 years from now, they will look back on us and say, we were good stewards. We did the right thing at that 50-year mark to keep it going so that there's a 100-year panel. That's my hope. And that we just keep all that good stuff going for the college. So if you would, do us a favor and take some pictures tonight, that we have the green screen out front, and do some posting on social media for us, if you would. We're trying to gain as many followers as we can on Facebook and social media, and we'd love for you to share pictures, stories, all that kind of stuff with family and friends in the community and around the country. Also, I want to mention a couple of the other events that we're doing. So we have about 1 or 2 events a month honoring the 50th, and for some we need volunteers as well. So we've got, Alan mentioned it, a disc golf tournament is going to take place on April 15th. That's a Saturday morning, and we've got some returning players coming for that. That should be really fun. That same night is the Miss East Georgia State College Scholarship Pageant right here in the auditorium, April 15th. And then we are going to participate for the 50th, of course, is in the Pine Tree Festival, which is that weekend of May 6th. And then we're doing something very special that Desmond's helping with. We're going to, with his help and the help of the Emmanuel Arts Council, have an art display of some former students and faculty and staff who are going to participate in that downtown display. And that's a few days after commencement, May 18th. So please mark your calendars for April 15th, May 6th, May 18th, and we'd love to have you participate. And also, thanks to Caitlin, we've got a memorabilia table outside. So if you didn't have a chance to take a look at that when you came in, there's all kinds of yearbooks and things there, and we'd love to have you, again, sort of take a picture, share that, and be a part of these future events. I wore my gold tie tonight, last thing, because we're honoring the golden anniversary, right? We called this panel the Golden Anniversary Panel, and that's really the standard going forward as well for the college. There's nothing wrong with silver, nothing wrong with bronze, but our standard will be the gold standard from here on out, and doing all we can. And to end the night on what I've called a sweet note, we've got a nice cake out there. So will you stay with us and have a piece of cake? It's a beautiful cake. Take a look at it before Susan helps us chop it up and into little pieces for all of us. And it's a 50th anniversary cake. We wanted to honor the night by really just celebrating as we would any anniversary, with a little bit of cake and punch, and have fun with that. So please stay around, mingle, socialize, and please join me again in thanking Dr. Durden and David Gribben, Darlene, for being the sort of task force that put this panel together, and all of our panel members. Thanks you guys so much. Okay. All right. So we're adjourned for the cake.